So 7.3 is just word problems about 7.2. 7.2 was the basic trig ratios. So the idea, two new words they might use in 7.3 is angle of elevation or angle of depression. So they're all going to, once they get the information out, will involve a right triangle because trig always has the right triangles. And so, or the trig at this level that we're looking at it always involves right triangles. And so they will, if they're looking for angle of elevation, it's basically like if you're a person here and you're looking up. And so your degrees would be here. Angle of elevation. Elevation. Like it's on the ground looking up. If we want angle of depression, it's like you're on the top somewhere, and if you look straight out, it would give you something that's parallel to the ground. Your view looking straight out. But angle of depression would be, instead of looking straight out, you would look down. Now, if you note this, if you look straight out, this line is parallel to the ground. And so, because of that, the angle of depression here is the same as the angle of elevation here, because those two are alternate interior angles. And what they're going to do then, they might use these two parts. They'll give you angle of elevation and this part and this part, and you want to set it up for a 7 or solve it for a 9. So if they were giving you angle of elevation and this piece and this piece, you would say, well, x is opposite the angle of elevation and y is a hypotenuse. To set that particular one, sine of the degrees, it's also always over the degree, it's always connected with the degrees. Sine degrees over 1 equals, in this case, x over y, because opposite goes over a hypotenuse. That's the trig ratio for sine. If they give you this, I'll use new letters. I've got x, y, u, and v. If they had this particular one and use this angle of depression, from which is the same as this, so then opposite over adjacent. So then they'd write it cosine of the degrees over 1 equals the opposite over the adjacent, whatever the letters are, in this case u over v. And if instead of those two they happen to have, they put u, v, x, y, m, and n, m, n. If they had angle of elevation, well, the m is right close, but the n is the hypotenuse. So that would be, why did I say cosine back here? Opposite over adjacent is tan. Cosine of the degrees over 1 equals, in this case, m over n, which is the adjacent over the hypotenuse, because sine is always opposite over hypotenuse, and tangent is always opposite over adjacent, and cosine is always adjacent over hypotenuse. But notice we set it up, sine with the degrees, or tangent with the degrees, or cosine with the degrees. That's written very poorly. Degrees over 1 equals, and then your particular ratio, so that you can cross multiply. Sine of the degrees times y equals x times 1. Tangent of the degrees times v equals u times 1. Cosine of the degrees times n equals m times 1. And that's how you would solve it. There are plenty of worksheets with an answer key. See if you can set them up And if you can cross multiply and get the matching answer. Huge, huge, huge thing when using sine, tangent, or cosine, that you are using degrees, not radian. We would have a whole nother discussion of how to do things with radian. But be sure that your calculator, whatever you're using, is set up in degrees. Whether you're using your phone, whether you're using Desmos, whatever you're using, it needs to be in degrees. And that's the way you'll match the answers I have in the answer key.